You guys that watch this channel know that I have a pretty low bar for U.S. politicians. They are some of the most narcissistic and idiotic people to ever crawl out of this country. But sometimes even I am in awe of just how corrupt and easily bought our politicians are. This time, it's the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who has found to have been in the pocket of the Turkish government. Just how on earth are these countries able to get their claws into our politicians so easily? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. So this is a crazy story, actually. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, who was previously the president of the Brooklyn borough, for almost a decade was in the pocket of the Turkish government. Now, the indictment doesn't name these officials as members of Turkish intelligence. They often talk about them as a businessman or promoter, right? They call one of them Promoter One. But it is eminently clear that Adams was accepting just an absolutely comical amount of bribes from these folks. The most important of which was campaign funds. See, New York, again, is the land of the feel-good policy that really isn't meant to help anybody. And one of New York's feel-good policies has been that they want to see New Yorkers who contribute to campaigns. We want to have state funds to really make those dollars count. So if your grandma in, Brooklyn writes a check to her favorite up-and-coming New York politician, well, the state government will step in and will match those funds, sometimes up to 8 taxpayer dollars for every $1 that a resident contributes. This sounds really good, except for the fact that if you're Eric Adams, you realize that there's enough loopholes to drive a truck through, or in his case, a Turkish Airlines 747. So Eric Adams goes ahead and says, guys, my Turkish friends, how about you pretend to be New Yorkers, funnel your contributions through regular workaday New Yorkers, and then our campaign is going to pretend that and file the paperwork so that we can pretend that we just got a big grassroots donation. The result is that every time those Turks sent him money, he got an extra $2,000 in public funds for each fake contribution. The end result is that Adams' mayoral campaign 3 years ago got $10 million in public funds. So you can imagine that there's probably about another between probably $2 and $10 million of Turkish money that went into Adams' pocket. Now, again, this was facilitated by a, quote, senior official in the Turkish diplomatic establishment, which is almost always when a senior official with a diplomatic passport does some illegal shit, that's a sign that they're a member of the intelligence community of their country, right? Now, in order to sell out and sell the influence and interests of his electorate to a foreign state, right, to commit treason, what do you think Eric Adams got? Yeah, $10 million buys a lot of annoying political ads, no doubt about it. But the Turkish government also hooked him up with first-class airline flights. Yeah, that's right. They gave him first-class airline flights on Turkish Air, which if you've ever flown Turkish Air, you know it's not a great experience. Oh, and they gave him 5-star hotel rooms in Istanbul. So much so that oftentimes, whenever Eric Adams had to fly internationally, because, New York has a lot of interests in places like France, China, Sri Lanka, India, Hungary, and Turkey. Well, Turkey makes sense. Of course, they were flying Eric Adams Turkish Airways. Why? Because they let him fly for free in first class and let him stay in 5-star resorts, right? Obviously, the New York mayor doesn't actually make enough money. He certainly doesn't make 5-star resort money, right? NYC mayor salary, officially, the mayor of New York City is supposed to make okay, this is funny. $120K a year. There you go. The mayor's entitled to a salary about $300K a year. So that's enough to rent approximately a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. Certainly not enough to fly first class on anybody's airline. Not like old Eric Adams was doing it, right? But here's the thing. You got to ask yourself, for all this effort, for all this corruption, for a decade of bribing and buying this guy, what did Turkey get? Well, the answer is one. Also, I want to point out one other important thing is that Adams actually had a Turkish government official on his staff. That's how much he was bought and paid for by the Turks, is that they literally put their people on his staff. Let's see if I can find this here. Here are the text messages on the day of Adams' election between what they call Businessman 1 and the promoter. Now listen to what they have to say. The promoter texts Businessman 1. These are 2 Turkish officials. Promoter says, "Good morning. The president of the Brooklyn borough is our brother from now on, sir." Businessman 1 says, "Good morning." Promoter says, "May it be auspicious for all of us." We messaged each other, right? They likely both sent each other. He's saying because they both sent each other good morning texts first thing in the morning. Obviously, they were both very excited that their Brooklyn borough president was suddenly the mayor of New York. Businessman 1 asks, "Are the elections over?" The promoter says, "It was yesterday, sir. Everyone messaged me that he, Eric Adams, was elected. Congratulations messages. He is most likely going to assign me as a representative, sir. I'm going to talk to our elders in Ankara about how we can turn this into an advantage for our country's lobby." And Businessman 1 says, "That would be nice." Guys, does this sound like the conversation between a club promoter and a businessman? No. It sounds like the conversation between an intelligence agent and his handler. Right? I'm going to talk to our elders in Ankara about how we can turn this to an advantage for our country's lobby. There's your answer. Right? And in 2021, Adams finally provided something of value to the Turks. He went in. So the staffer, his official Turkish government handler, was actually said, "Listen, the Turkish consulate in New York is going to be opening soon. And we want to make sure that it's done in time for the UN General Assembly meeting where the president of Turkey is going to be staying there. He's going to be opening this new consulate. It's very important that it go well." But the New York Fire Department says it's not safe for occupancy. It doesn't comply with fire standards. So instead of actually getting in compliance, they said, "Listen, Eric Adams, you have to give us a permit to occupy this building so that it's open in time for our boss's visit." Now, you may think to yourself, well, we're going to talk a little bit about what the real scheme is here. One, the Turkish house is a massive building. I mean, look at the size of this building in Brooklyn. This is a incredibly expensive building, and it's incredibly important and prestigious that it be open. So, Eric Adams, through his Turkish intelligence officer staffer, actually called the New York City Fire Commissioner and said, "Listen, I need this thing opened up. I need you to get this letter of defect out and done." Right? So, it's done. And Eric Adams, of course, hooking up the Turkish government. Now, I wanted to talk about why the Turkish government would spend 10 years and millions of dollars to open up a consulate, a building a few days early. But that's not the scheme. There's a scheme here, and we're going to talk about what it is. But first, you may know that a lot of influencers, they're also open for sale. Right? A lot of influencers have been bought and sold by governments, particularly Russia. I'm not. I haven't taken money from any government, and I've never even taken money from a major media corporation. And the reason is because I rely on you guys. So I have combatvetnews.com. That is my website, my version of Patreon. Twice a week, I take uncensored combat footage from the front lines of Ukraine and elsewhere in the world. We do a deep dive analysis over the tactics, how they're evolving, what units are involved. It's the best way to get insight into modern warfare. We also have a weekly Q&A for Lieutenant tier and above, and the by name shoutouts for Colonel tier. So if you want to support the channel, help me out, go over to combatvetnews.com. The link is in the description. Okay, so for a lot of countries, this is extremely widespread, right? You might know that New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez was convicted of taking cash bribes and gold, acting as a foreign agent for the Egyptian government, right? And then you may also remember Representative Henry Cuellar. This is all in the last maybe 2 years, was charged with accepting huge bribes from the Azerbaijani government. In order, right? In fact, the Cuellars actually were linked to these very strange nonprofit called the Turquoise Council of Eurasian and Americas. The point is, the officials from Azerbaijan really wanted to, really spent a lot of money bribing Cuellar for interest. But that's not all. You also, this year, have Jeff Fortenberry, who was convicted, insanely enough, of accepting bribes from a Nigerian, an illegal campaign contribution funneled through straw men, sounds familiar, received from a Nigerian Lebanese Paris-based billionaire named Gilbert Chagori. He also bribed 3 other American political candidates. So you could see, oh yeah, he's also, interesting. Gilbert Ramez Chagori is also a diplomat. From Nigeria. Who figured? Right? Van Taylor, of course, another congressman who actually got caught sleeping with, no kidding, the ex-wife of an Islamic State member. I don't even know if that counts. I mean, it's foreign influence, certainly. She was literally known as the ISIS bride. And of course, Bob Menendez. So why do these countries work so hard to get their claws into these elected officials? Well, the answer is their investments, right? Bob Menendez is a classic example of these investments paying off, right? Because in several instances, Bob Menendez personally intervened on behalf of the Egyptian government. In one instance, funneling them $100 million of aid that would otherwise have not been given to the Egyptian government because of their human rights violations. And so if he does that a few times, the Egyptian government gets a payday of like $300 million. So compared to the, let's say, $3 million at most that they bribed Menendez, it's a massive deal. It's 100x. Something even the best venture capitalists in the world salivate at 100x investment. So I point this out because the idea is to get them early, right? And the idea is that you don't try to bribe them once they're congressmen. You get them to take minor bribes, or in Eric Adams' case, right? Literally just give him gifts and get him to accept them. Why? Because once he's accepted the gifts, you have blackmail on him. You're already in the pocket of the Turkish government. And if you were to try to back away from it, they would out you because they're in Turkey. They're going to be fine. You are the one who's going to lose your career and possibly go to jail. And oftentimes they don't ask for anything in return. And in 99% of the cases, right, you give an up-and-coming politician, again, the president of the Brooklyn borough, you get him on your payroll. Maybe he does you a favor, right? Maybe he doesn't do anything. Okay, but statistically, there's a pretty good chance they're going to move up in the world. And Eric Adams did. He became mayor of New York. And it wasn't until he was mayor of New York that they said, listen, we want you to just help us out a little bit with this this fire department thing. And if he had done it, now what? Right? He did do it, but he got caught. If he hadn't gotten caught, Eric Adams, now the Turkish government would have even more blackmail on him. And what happens? Well, you're the mayor of New York. What's the next logical place for you to be? Congress or the Senate. And now the Turkish government has their man in the Senate, in the House, right? And God help you, What if Eric Adams ran for the presidency? For the Turkish government, again, think like a venture capitalist. Think like, because that's what this is. You take a crop of 100 ambitious, promising politicians. And yeah, the Turkish government helped their favorite guys ahead with these $10 million plus schemes. But if you have 100 of them, 95 won't be able to win elections at the next level. But 5 might become something like mayor of New York, right? And of those 5, one of them might make it to the Senate or Congress. But there's only 500 congressmen in total. So if you can get a couple of them on your payroll, the potential payout is massive. Again, look no further than the Egyptians and Bob Menendez. Hundreds of millions of dollars of military equipment funneled to them away from others, right? And that's what Azerbaijan got. By having Henry Cuellar in their pocket, they were able to stop military aid in some cases to Armenia, their regional rival, and instead funnel it towards them. They were able to block the U.S. efforts to recognize things like the Armenian genocide. There's all these kind of paydays that you can get by having just a few interested congressmen in your pocket. And so for Eric Adams, he was just another investment by the Turkish government. And remember, the Turks do it, the Azerbaijanis do it, the Egyptians do it, the Israelis do it, the Nigerians do it. Every single country is doing it because the U.S., here's the thing, U.S. politicians, there's a reason they're all mega multi-millionaires. And it's not because they're great investors. It's because they are ultimately selected for their greed, right? If you're a low-level state senator, if you're a city council member and you have integrity and you go, hey, sorry, you're affiliated with a foreign government, I can't take your money. Well, you know what's going to happen next election? The person who doesn't have those qualms, they're going to be getting all the money from the Congolese or the Yemenis, or whoever's bribing people that day. And so you end up selecting for the people that are just easily bought. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to all the members of CombatVetNews.com, particularly Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Gaius Marning, Gina Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Fran Zacharias, AL90, and Petra Tororu. I couldn't do this without you guys. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. That makes a difference for me. And, of course, let me know if there are other senators and congressmen who get caught up in this. You know I love to make their stories public because it's easy to forget that our elected officials work for us. They're supposedly. Cheers.